All right, peace be to you. Assalamu alaikum. This is Omar Abdul Malik, physician assistant and health educator. So I'm going to be hopefully fairly brief. I'm going to talk about race. And I don't usually address this issue head on because I really enjoy talking more about medicine and health education. So my background's in biology, medicine, and health education. I've got a few degrees in those various subjects. And then I'm passionate about mentoring. But I think I would be remiss in my responsibility as a as a brother, as a Black American, and somebody who actually takes care of patients and educates people of all different races. And it's Juneteenth, so that's the day that it was a ratification to the Constitution that freed the slaves, my ancestors. So I'm a direct descendant of slaves here. My folks were from various areas in the South. So somebody asked me questions about race. What was my experience as a Black man growing up in this country? And my dad's from New York. My mother's from Chicago. I was born in 1968, so I'm about 52 years old now. So I've been around for a while. I spent most of my life in Washington, D.C., which was actually one of the major slave ports, and the Underground Railroad runs through parts of Georgetown in D.C. So I grew up in D.C. and Southern Maryland. So I kind of went through the gamut of, in Southern Maryland in particular, during the 70s when my family first moved out of D.C. because of the heroin epidemic, and then couldn't move back to D.C. in the 80s because of the crack epidemic. I grew up in what you could call a working class white neighborhood. We were one of maybe two Black families in the area. And, I met some very good white folks that eventually judged us on the content of our character. I did have those folks that were, you'd be walking down the street and you get, "Hey, nigger, go back where you came from." Or "Go back to Africa." So I actually went back where I came from, which is D.C. But, I don't think the people of that particular ilk never got very far in life, especially if they didn't change their perspective. Fast forward to my adult life, and I came back to DC in '88. So I've been in Washington D.C. for about 30 years, a little more than 30 years. As a healthcare provider, I've been in the healthcare field for close to 30 years. 20 of those years has been as a physician assistant and educator. When somebody asks, have I ever experienced racism? Like, I've never had students, white students, walk out of a classroom and be like, "I don't want that nigger teaching me. He can't teach me anything." And I've taught at some, I've been a guest lecturer at some fairly prestigious places where I've been, one of maybe very few Blacks that either taught or lectured at those particular places. People were very amenable to hearing me and listening to what I had to say. In terms of patients being receptive to me, I've only had two patients when I was a nursing assistant back in the early 90s. I walked in and introduced myself to this old white lady, and I said, "Okay, I'm Omar, I'm your nursing assistant. I'm going to be taking care of you." She said, "Get this Black nigger out of here." But to be fair, I was working on the Alzheimer's unit, so I think a lot of that had to do with this lady's dementia And she was an old white woman, like in her close to 90s, if she wasn't actually in her 90s. So she had like what I would call real violent racism uh, from like probably the early 20s, from when she was born. But patients that I've had like that are very, very few. I've treated white folks, black folks, Hispanics, of course, that's a language group. But I've never had what I would call an outward racist experience in terms of hiring people, hiring me or not hiring me. I don't know if they didn't hire me because they saw this black guy. If I took my kufi off and even changed my name, our slave name, if you will, was Brown, from my great great grandfather. But they could have said, all right, we're not going to hire any black guys. I don't know that this ever happened. So you've got this whole issue about systemic racism. Has that affected me? I don't know. Has what I would call outward racism affected me in terms of my professional growth? I haven't felt it. I can't quantitatively or qualitatively say, okay, it happened here. It happened this many times. It happened in this particular instant. I mean, you can kind of cherry pick throughout my life, but it hasn't really stopped me. I've got a bachelor's degree, actually 2 bachelor's, a master's, and a doctorate. I've been able to publish articles in peer-reviewed journals. I've given lectures, and I think I've been fairly well received by all sorts of folks. But I don't think it's stopped me personally. In terms of experiencing racism on my job as a physician assistant or a health educator, that hasn't really happened, or I can't pinpoint that. I've sat in the patient room of good old boys, white guys. You're stereotypical what they would even call themselves rednecks. Like, I ain't nothing but a redneck, man. I'm from West Virginia. I like my hunting. I like my bear trapping gear. And I want to get out this hospital. You're okay with me, Mr. Omar? Took care of a guy from he was a coal miner. He was of that kind of particular, I guess you could say, socioeconomic class. Didn't feel, and we chatted, as me being his healthcare provider and him being the patient. So I never had anybody say, I don't want that black guy taking care of me. Something like that would usually get back to me from one of the nurses or the techs, or even one of the doctors. But that's really been my experience. I think, unfortunately, race will be a hot button topic until maybe we all become kind of one amalgam of each other. I've got biracial nephews and nieces. Phenotypically, you might look at them and say, they kind of look like a combination of Dwayne Johnson, aka The Rock, or maybe Vanessa Williams and Mariah Carey types. So, I think we're all going to kind of look like that in the coming decades in the United States. And that really bothers some people. And that may be racist within itself. I don't really know. I'd have to talk to those people as individuals. But I hope that my rambling answered those questions that some of you all asked me. I'll talk more about race. It's a very interesting thing. I personally believe there's only one race, which is the human race. There's genotypes and manifestations of those are called phenotypes. So we're working on working it out. But I wish you all the best of success in your positive endeavors and wish you peace. Take care.